But, as the narration says, but even then, among the twitching cadavers and the hum of shattered circuitry, among the fields of failed and fading sparks, even then something stirred hope. And then we see Perceptor, Verity, and Iron Fist, and they have a really big gun that they give to Springer, and he just says, sweet. And he starts shooting Overlord with it. And the gun seems to be doing a little bit of damage, but it's not really slowing him down that much, and Overlord's not super pleased with being shot at. So he just says, that's enough, and he pulls off Springer's face. What? And what makes it even worse is after he's like holding Springer's face in his hand, he's just like, sweet. And I think that that's super creepy. And then Overlord pushes back Perceptor, and he looks at Iron Fist, and he's like, I am going to, you know, turn you inside out and scrape your insides or whatever. And Iron Fist says, I'm warning you, don't come any closer. And of course Overlord's like, whatever, I'm like 100 times bigger than you. But then Iron Fist explains that the gun that he gave to Springer wasn't necessarily shooting Overlord as much as it was injecting him with a whole bunch of deterrence chips. And Overlord thinks, oh, that's not a problem because they don't have the codes. But of course Iron Fist is now Equatus and can set them off whenever he feels like it, which he then does. And all of the deterrence chips explode inside of Overlord. But doing that wasn't super good for Iron Fist either, because I guess using the power of Equatus, it kind of knocks him out for a second. And then Verity is like, oh no, Iron Fist, are you okay? And she hears this voice behind her that says, you, my little one, should worry more about yourself. And we get the coolest panel ever, at least in this comic. Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. It is just Overlord on fire with like a skull head, and it's awesome. It is so cool. I know I said I wanted a poster of Springer stabbing that guy. I lied. I want this poster, which is even scarier, but it'd be cool. And what makes it even creepier is that in that panel where he's on fire and looking like the devil or something, he is talking about tearing Verity apart and like popping her bones and ripping out her blood vessels, which you're just like, that's an awesome image. And he says, you know, it's your fault. How am I supposed to beat Megatron when I'm like this? And when Verity realizes that the entire, like, point of Overlord's being is to get Megatron's attention, she just kind of laughs at herself and tells him that Megatron is dead. So once Overlord realizes that he's not going to get to face Megatron, he kind of just slumps down and is like, but he owes me, which is really pathetic. And then he gets shot by Impactor, who says, we all owe you, and you still talk too much. And Impactor goes at him, and Verity's like, oh, kill him, finish him off. And he's asking Overlord, like, to fight back, and Overlord's just completely, like, depressed now that he realizes that he's not going to get to fight Megatron. And he just tells Impactor to have his fun and, you know, get rid of him. And Impactor says that he's not doing it for himself, he's doing it for Springer. And when he says that, he basically makes the decision not to kill Overlord. And at this point, Impactor explains that when he first got arrested, he heard Springer say something that he didn't really want to hear, but he knew was true, which was that Squadron X totally deserved to die, but Impactor didn't have the right to kill them. So he's basically using that philosophy on Overlord. And so kind of after all of this, Verity just says, well, what about the other Decepticons now? Are they going to come get us? And Impactor's like, nope, without Overlord, they really don't care. Then Iron Fist wakes up and, you know, asked what he missed. And Verity just says, I'll tell you on the way home. And after this, we kind of get a bit of an epilogue to the entire story between Prowl and Ultra Magnus. And Ultra Magnus explains, of course, that Topspin, Twin Twist, Pyro, and Rotorstorm all died on Garrus 9, and that Springer actually didn't die when his face was pulled off, but he is now on life support, him and Fortress Maximus both. And Guzzle survives, so he obviously... he takes a licking and keeps on kicking. He doesn't mind if he gets torn in half. And him and Impactor kind of go off on their own. And Iron Fist dies of an aneurysm. What the heck? I have to say I was totally excited when I read this because I thought that Iron Fist was going to survive because he was my favorite. And then it's just like one panel, oh no, he's dead. But it totally makes sense because while he was creating and working with the Cerebro-centric bullets that Guzzle had been using like the entire run of the comic, he had had an accident and one had gotten lodged in his head and was slowly working its way to his brain and basically had finally gotten there. Which I find super interesting because he knew he was going to die this entire run, which I'll talk about in a second. Of course, Ultra Magnus then realizes that is the reason that Prowl asked him to be in the records in the first place. And then we find out the very interesting reason that Prowl had there be a mission where they went and downloaded the contents of the Aquatis chamber and then wipe it out. Because Prowl knew that if the Decepticons found that information from the trials and how not good some of those Autobots were being, that it was super propaganda. And we see that Prowl was just really torn apart by having to witness all the trials at Aquatis and seeing what he calls atrocities that all the Autobots could be doing even though they're the good guys. And Ultra Magnus gives him one last little, like, thumb drive with all the information from Aquatis, and he says, it's not going to be easy, but you have to go public with this information. And Prowl doesn't necessarily think it's the best idea because he doesn't want to cause a disruption within the Autobots, but he says, you know, okay, you can leave Ultra Magnus, I'll give this to Bumblebee. Whatever. The thing is, Ultra Magnus didn't check the drive to see if it was corrupted or not before he gave it to Prowl, so it would be pretty easy for Prowl to just say, oh, the data wasn't there. Too bad. But either way, he just leaves it with Prowl and moves on. And after that, we just get kind of the end of the data log that was going over this issue. But we find out that who was actually writing it was, of course, Faraday, because Iron Fist has died by this point. And the last couple of things that she says are actually pretty cool, which is, but maybe this isn't the end of the road, maybe it's a stop-off, a moment to reflect before moving on. Because that's how we honor those we've lost. By looking forward, not back. You see, this is one of those stories with a moral, and the moral is simply this: life persists. And that is the end of Last Stand of the Wreckers. Oh my gosh. This series is brilliant. Out of the stuff that IDW has done, I would easily say that this is their best set of issues, miniseries, whatever you want to call it, like, that they have done. The writing, of course, is awesome. It's so nice to see, you know, some slight grittiness to the Transformers, and it's not that the Transformers are usually really, like, kiddie or anything like that, but this just kind of takes it a step further. And there's, you know, moral problems with this. We're having, you know, Autobots that aren't behaving like Autobots and Decepticons that are a little bit more innocent than we think they are, at least with the Squadron X situation. And that's super cool. I love seeing things that kind of break down what it is to be a good guy and what it is to be a bad guy. And of course, the art is gorgeous. Everything that is good about this series is brought to its full potential in this issue. The artwork is fantastic. Like I said, those couple of panels where Overlord is like on fire is the coolest thing I have ever seen, and the use of color in this issue is just as good, if not better, than it has been. But yeah, I mean, this is awesome. I cannot wait for this to come out in trade just so I can buy it again, because it's amazing. And one of the really cool things about this comic is, because I didn't really know any of the G2 characters, introducing them, it's like I felt like I knew these characters by like the second line of dialogue that they said, and I became totally attached to all of them, you know, by the end. And Iron Fist's kind of like, when you find out at the end what's been going on with him and the fact that he knew he was gonna die, it makes all of his little freakouts, and of course, you know now why he has been passing out and why he kind of freaked out when Rotorstorm got killed, and it was just a complete, like, he just died, because I think Iron Fist kind of knew that's how his death was gonna be. He was kind of just gonna die, it was just gonna happen. It's awesome, because all of the characters that are introduced in this are that fantastic. Of course, Overlord is a awesome villain, but I also love kind of all the mental things that are going on with him as well, and of course all the other rookies are great. You know, the fact that we have that little bit of backstory between Guzzle and the fact that he's lost friends who were trying to save Cup, and Pyro completely redeeming himself at the end, and even Rotorstorm, you know, he wasn't there very long, but he was still a really cool character that I think that, you know, the readers cared about. I could seriously go on for like ever about how awesome this series is. I love it so much. If you haven't read this yet, you shouldn't have listened to my reviews, for one, because they totally spoil everything. But go get it. It's awesome, and you really want IDW to know that this is the kind of stuff that we want. Because I've read a little bit of the newer stuff, and it's not this. Basically, we want more of things like this. I'm not necessarily saying that we need more Wreckers, but we need more comics of this quality, because it's like, we know that you can do it, IDW. It is possible. Get Nick Roche to do more things. So yeah, I just want this to be an example for IDW as to the kind of things that we should be seeing more of and less of ongoing. So that is my overall review of the Wreckers. This issue was fantastic, and it was a great cap off to the rest of the series. Like I said, I could rant on about it forever, probably. Besides Wreckers, I have now read all of the issues of Ironhide, so after I get together my Scorponok review, which is kind of the next thing on my list, I'll probably go ahead and review Ironhide, because it's an interesting one, and I think it'd be fun to review. It's kinda weird. But yeah, definitely the next thing that I'll be talking about is my G1 Scorponok, because he needs a video, because he's awesome. And besides Scorponok toy-wise, I have gotten Drift and War for Cybertron Bumblebee, so I'll probably slightly mention them, probably just at the end of the Scorponok review, because it's mostly that Drift is awesome and that Bumblebee is a pain, but I'll get into that when I talk about them. And other than that, that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed these reviews of Last Stand of the Wreckers, and you should all just go reread your issues like 5 times because they're awesome. And I'll catch y'all later. Bye!